Alright, so this is going to be what our next project is going to consist of, what the final product will look like. It's called Selection City. You're going to build this product in using just Adobe Photoshop, and it's going to be made up of different buildings. Now notice that each building, if you look on the far right hand side, is on its own little separate layer. And each of these buildings is found in another document. So we're going to be able to select and cut out each one of these buildings and place it into Photoshop on its own layer and be able to manipulate and edit it from there. By the way, let me show you this real quick. Notice how I have my Photoshop set up. If I was to resize the screen, see how all my palettes are kind of sticking to one side and everything's within one kind of large frame? If your computer ever does this and you want to turn this application off, in other words, you want to be able to see the background that's behind it, you can go to Window and choose Application Frame. Notice it's got a check mark by it. If I select it again, it'll pop off and turn back into what I would call normal mode. I'm used to working this way with my palettes just stuck to the side, and then I can only move my document around that way. And that was under Window, and the Application Frame is what I turned off. For today's project, yeah, I wanted to save that one. You go to Moodle, make sure you download the buildings zip, and so this is just a variety of images. They're all zipped together in one folder. Let's see, I should have had it downloaded by now. Hopefully so. There it is. And when you open it up, it'll unload a folder that has a variety of just different JPEGs that we're going to be working with for this particular project in itself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work through, just kind of quickly show you the different tools, the selection tools, and how they will help you build the project that we're going to work on. So let's jump back into Photoshop. Now in Photoshop, to create a new document, before we've only been working on objects and documents that have previously existed, but to make a new one, you can go to File and New, and this will bring up your new document dialog box. Same as in InDesign, the first thing you got to do is to set up what size dimensions you want your project to be. For this one, it's just going to be a regular 7 inches wide by 10 inches tall. If you ever need to change up any other type of measurements, you can easily click on here and choose between pixels, points, picas, those different things. The resolution, remember when we first started Photoshop, I talked about photographic images are made up of different pixels. The more pixels it has, the higher the image quality, the finer the detail you got. And this is where you can set the amount of detail you want within your document. If you're getting something printed off, the rule of thumb to remember is you want your resolution to be about 300 dpi, or pixels per inch. If you're getting something for the web or something that's just going to be seen on a screen, you can bump it down to as low as 72 pixels per inch. But for now, we're just going to keep it at 300 as if we're going to print it off. You can also work in different color modes. RGB is what a screen would use. I'm going to swap over to CMYK since this is a printed document, but we're not going to print it. We're actually going to upload it. Everything else, I'm just going to keep it the same from here. We're not going to worry about the rest of the details. And we'll say OK. And so this is our new document that we've created. By default, the background is just going to be white. And remember, we're working primarily in our layers palette, so you want to make sure layers is open. As a matter of fact, let me drag it off just so we can see it as we're working within our different documents. Okay, so the first one we're going to open up is we need to place a background image behind this one. So I'm going to go to today's folder. This will be the JPEG that we're going to work in. Remember, to open something in Photoshop, you can drag its icon down to the Photoshop icon, and it'll open up automatically. And they may be docked together, so I'll have to drag them off this way. What I want to be able to do is to select all the pixels that are in this one and copy and paste them over into this document. Now, the last time we did this, you used your Move tool, the little black arrow, and you can literally click and drag it over. That's one way of doing it. Let me show you how you can do it with the selection tools. By the way, if you ever need to delete something, you can go back to your layers palette and click on the little trash can. It'll ask you, are you sure? Say OK, and it's gone. Let's use the selection tools to make a selection. All of the selection tools we're going to be using, if you'll look in the top portion of your toolbox, are these three right here. They each kind of do something similar, but they do it in a different fashion. The first one we're going to use is called the Rectangle Marquee tool. If you don't see it, you can always click and hold, and this will give you a pop-out. You can choose some other, there's an elliptical marquee that's hiding underneath that one, which will let you choose circles. The rectangle marquee, with this one you can click and drag over an area, and you can see now why it's called a marquee, because it gives this little black and white dotted line going around this particular area, like a movie marquee. Sometimes you hear it called marching ants because it looks like little marching ants walking around this way. When you make a selection of an area, you can move that selection around just by clicking inside of it. So you can see I made a huge selection, and now I can choose a particular area that I want to copy and paste. If you click outside of that area, notice that my icon changed from inside to outside. It'll automatically deselect that area. So what I want to do is I want to click at the very, very top corner and drag down until I get the whole selection. Then I can go to Edit and Copy, choose my new document, and edit and paste it in there. With it pasted, again, it's going to paste on its own layer, and so now that's fully in the background layer by itself. You can do this for any particular size. By the way, if you need to deselect anything again, you can always go to Select and choose Deselect. Notice Command D is your hotkey, and that'll also get rid of your marching ants from there. Very, very simple, very easy thing to do. All you do is click and drag, and there's the area. You can copy and paste it into its own form. Then you can use your Move tool to move it around as well. I'll delete that one away. So that's the rectangular marquee tool. I'll close this one out. No worries of saving it. The next one we're going to use is the elliptical marquee. Let's add a moon to the background that we're working on. So for this one, let's use the moon JPEG. Drag it down to Photoshop. In our case, we want a circular selection. So the circular marquee, the elliptical marquee, is the tool that you want to use, and it's found underneath the rectangular one. If you click and hold, elliptical. This time, if you click and drag, may be a little bit difficult to see, but you get a circular selection. Now I want this circle to be a perfect circle. Notice that if I can make it really skinny, I can make it tall, just like any type of elliptical, an egg shape. To make a perfect circle, hold down the Shift key, and when you drag out, it'll stay proportional with its height and its width. Now you can see it's perfectly circular. Let's do the same thing. Go to Edit and Copy, jump back over to our new document, and paste it in there as well. Fantastic. Notice again, it's on its own layer, so when I choose my selection tool, the Move tool, I can click and move it around, place it wherever I want it to be up at the top here. Am I going too fast? Very simple, easy stuff right here. These are the two easiest ones to work with because they're just intuitive that way. I'll close this one out. So let's get to the buildings and some of the other more difficult techniques you can do with a selection tool. I'm going to open up Building 1. Let's copy and paste this one into our document. Now to choose this one, we're going to use our rectangle marquee tool. So this is only going to make rectangular selections. I don't just want to click and drag over the entire area, because if I copied and pasted it, I would get the dark area in the background. That's not what I want. So I'm going to deselect it. Instead, I want to be able to add on to my selection and have multiple selections to get this rectangle, because it's made up of a series of rectangles anyway. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom in. By the way, you can use your zoom tool, or you can do Command +, and that'll zoom in also, and then I can scroll down. I'm going to click and drag over a particular area. Now I've kind of selected that bottom portion there. I'm not going to worry too much with the details. I know I'm off. I can do a much better job. To add on to a selection, here's the key to remember. The Shift key, watch my cursor change. Let's see. When I hold down the Shift key, I got a plus sign. That means it's going to add on to the next time I click and drag and overlap an area. So now it's added that selection area. Let's scroll up and get this taller area. I'm going to zoom out, Command and the minus sign. We'll zoom out. Holding down my Shift key, got my plus sign, click and drag, and I'm adding on to the selection that I'm working with. Shift key, click and drag, adds, click and drag, we'll add again, one more again. Let's do a better job of that one. And this final top portion here. So now I've got an irregular shape completely selected using only one selection tool. Very, very easy to do. Command C to copy, and we're going to paste that one in there as well. Now when you build these, I'll let you know, the background ones are going to have to be a little bit taller than just placing them on your horizon line that you have here. So I'm going to place that one up a little bit higher, so when I stack the rest of them, they'll fill in this lower portion here. That's how you can add on to a selection using your rectangular marquee. Let me give you just another quick one. If you want to subtract from a selection, the Shift key, let me choose my rectangle marquee again. The Shift key allows you to add onto a selection. If you've accidentally added on too much, hold down your Option key. The Option key will give you a minus sign next to your little cursor. Now when I click and drag over an area, it'll subtract away from that area. So Shift adds, Option subtracts. Very, very simple. Let's see, I'll close that one out, and we'll go from that one. For buildings 2 and 3, let's grab those JPEGs. So you've got two different buildings here. We're going to use what's called the polygon lasso tool. And they look kind of similar from the last one. So we're going to use a different tool to work on it. I'll tell you what, I'll just do this one for time's sake. Show you how to work with that one. The lasso tools allow you to freely draw off the area that you want to select. And these are located just under your rectangle marquee tool. There's two different types, really three different types we're going to work with. You've got a regular lasso, a polygon lasso, and a magnetic lasso. Let's do the polygon lasso first. With this one, let's zoom in so we can see what we're working on. This will allow you to click each little point. So I'm going to start off here. Just click once. You don't have to hold your mouse down. Notice that there's a line following my cursor. Every time I click, it's going to continuously draw a line from each point to point that I'm clicking off of. And what I want to do is I want to click over, and let's see, oh, it's going to scroll so slow. The entire area, see if I can zoom out, there we go, until I have my building selected. Just clicking once. When I reach the starting point again, watch my cursor closely. Notice that there's a little circle that kind of appears when I get to the starting point. That means it's going to close off that area, and now I've got the marching ants going around that particular area by itself. So the lasso tools allow you to kind of free-form draw off an area, and the polygon allows you to draw straight lines easily. So I'll copy, paste that one into there. What you guys are going to do, you're going to do the same thing for both buildings. Use your polygon lasso tool to outline each of the buildings, copy, and paste them into here as well. So since that's the polygon lasso tool, that one took up a little bit of time. Let me show you a quicker way, another tool that will work really best. Let's see, buildings 4 and 5 are what we're going to do next. These two. To quickly select an area around the building. Now if I was to use the polygon lasso tool for these two, it would take forever because think of all the points that you're going to have to click all the way around the edges. It's just way too much, way too tedious. I want the computer to do the work for me. This is where the magnetic lasso tool comes in handy. Again, this one's going to be found under, there we go. This one's going to be found under your lassos. There's magnetic lasso. This one is going to allow the computer to look for contrast in an edge that you're working with. For instance, I can definitely tell there's a difference between the green and the dark grayish brown of the hotel on this one because there's a good contrast between those two colors. So I'm going to use that to my advantage. With the magnetic lasso, I'm going to click once in this area, and I'm not holding down my mouse. I'm just going to drag along, and you can see it's starting to add a line and a bunch of little points to what I'm working with. Literally what the computer is doing is it's looking for that contrast. And you can see if I get off by a little bit, it may mess up. Let's see if I can scroll down. I'm just going to go all the way along the edge, and it's automatically noticing the difference between that green and the gray. Don't even have to hold down my mouse, just kind of move it along. See how fast I can go to get this. Now this would be more difficult if the building was, say, a green building, or if the background didn't have as much contrast. Alright, so now I'm back to the beginning. Click again, and automatically now it fills in the selection that I have. Notice that I kind of messed up on that little portion right there. Let's zoom in on that one, see if we can clean it up. So I want to get rid of that little bit of green. Here's how you can get rid of it. Let's choose my rectangle marquee. What button do I hold down to erase away? Option key, great. Hold down my option key, I'm just going to select that area and got it cleaned up right there. If I wanted to add on, hold down that shift key. I can clean it up that way as well. I'm not going to worry about that little bit. So that's what the magnetic lasso tool allows you to do. It quickly selects over an entire area based on the contrast between two different colors. We'll copy that one, and where'd my other document go? By the way, if you can't see it, you can always go to Window. There's my untitled document, and we'll paste it into there as well. So these two, use your magnetic lasso, select them, copy and paste them over. The last couple of ones are going to be your magic wand and quick selection tool. By the way, the one that I'm not going to get y'all to practice is just the regular lasso tool. This one allows you to free draw over an area. So it doesn't have anything special to it. You can just click and drag over an area, freehand draw, and now I've got just a blobulous shape that I can quickly select and copy over. That's what the regular lasso would do. I'm getting y'all to do the special ones. Y'all can handle it. So for buildings 6 and 7, these are going to be even faster ways of adding on a selection. Let's drag those into Photoshop. For these, we're going to use what's called the magic wand tool. If you've ever wanted to be a magician, now's your chance. Just like the magnetic lasso tool looks at your pixels, looks at all the colors, and tries to find similar or contrasting pixels, the magic wand tool is located, could be underneath your quick selection tool. It looks like a firecracker going off, or a magician's wand spraying its magic all over everything. Magic wand tool. With this one, you can click in a certain area and the computer will look for like pixels around the area that you clicked on. Now there's one thing you've got to keep in mind, and there are some options up here at the top. First of all, there's a tolerance. Don't worry about anti-aliasing, just remember to always keep it on. And there's also continuous that you want to have checked off as well. I'm going to have my tolerance, so we'll have it at 32. Let's say I click on this white area. Just going to click once, and very quickly you see it selected all of the white pixels within that bounding box. If I was to click again on another area, it would select these white pixels. What it's doing is it's looking for those like pixels. So if I wanted to add on to a selection, what button do I hold down? Shift key, great. Notice I got my plus sign. I can add on and quickly select everything that's white that's on here, on this entire document. By the way, I'm going to deselect it real quick. If you didn't have continuous turned on, I'm going to turn that off. If I click just on the white area, it would select all the white pixels over the entire document, not just on this one. Let's see if there's anything down here. See how it's kind of picking up some of these lighter pixels down here? That's why it's important to have continuous checked off whenever you work. So I'm going to deselect. Let's redo this again. Click, 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 click. So in just a couple of clicks, I've selected all the windows. Let's do the same thing for the blue area. Holding down my shift key, I'm going to click once. Now I've selected the blue area that's on here. Select again, click. Notice that when I clicked on the darker area, it got a few pixels but didn't get everything that's on here. This is where your tolerance comes in. Tolerance kind of means like how much of a tolerance, how much of a difference between pixels do you want to go. 32 is a good average one, but if we bumped it up to something like, say, 60, and I started clicking on these areas, then it's going to pick up a lot darker pixels and be a little bit better selection that we're working on. So let's quickly add, literally all I'm doing is holding down my shift key and clicking over everything until It's all selected. You can very quickly get carried away doing this. There we go. Awesome. So it looks like I got that entire building selected, just a matter of a couple of clicks. So we'll copy it, let's jump back over here and paste that one in there as well. Same thing for this bottom building. Use the magic wand to select that one. I'm going to show you the very last tool to use, and this is going to be your quick selection tool. Quick selection tool, let's see, I think it's for buildings, nope, not 6 and 7, 8 and 9. Will allow you to quickly select entire areas, and this is kind of a new thing, I think to version CS3 that came out. It's one of my favorite tools. It works a lot like a paintbrush. Rather than having to click over certain areas to select light pixels, I'm going to click and hold. So this is our quick selection tool. It looks like a paintbrush, so I've got a big circle. You can actually adjust the size of it to get into smaller details or larger areas. I'm going to set it pretty small so you can watch it. With this one, I'm going to click and drag over an area, and as I drag, you can see it's adding on to that selection. So you can see I'm clicking over the window, and it's building on to the selection that I have. And as long as I'm clicking over that area, it'll very quickly say, oh, you want to select these pixels? Okay. And so all I have to do is just very quickly drag over my entire image area. Computer does all the work for me. In 1 or 2 clicks, I've got the entire building. Can copy it, paste it in here as well, move it down to where it should be at. Y'all can arrange these buildings however you want, as long as it looks pleasing. So if I wanted to do something like this entire area would take forever to do with the polygon tool or any other selection tool. All I got to do is just kind of paint over it very, very quickly. Just make sure you get all the details. And it's going to pick up all the buildings and all the little information about that. Y'all have any questions on using the quick selection tool? Very, very simple, but it's one of those core tools that you just got to know when using Photoshop. Last thing you're going to do, it's going to pick up the tree. In your instructions, I'm asking you to use 2 different tools, just to show you that you can use more than one tool in the same thing. I want you to use, let's see, what did I say? Use the rectangle marquee tool and the magic wand. So here's the rectangle tool. How can I use the rectangle tool to select the tree? Not a hard question. Yeah, just select it. Select the whole thing. All right. If I want you to use the magic wand tool, how can this help me select an area? Very good. Remember, the option key will subtract away an area. So all I really want to do is get rid of this white. So holding down the option key, if I was to click on that, it's going to select just the white pixels. Now I've got the tree selected. Kind of cool? Very simple. All right. We'll copy and paste this one into what we're working with as well. So now I've got my tree. Place my little tree down here along. We'll actually place several different trees along the edge. Notice now in our layers palette that we've got a lot of different layers that we're working with. Everything is on its own particular layer. If you do need to move something around, let's say I've got layer 8 selected, which was my tree layer. No matter where I click, it's going to move that tree around, even if I'm not clicking on the tree. Here's a great tip to remember. I've got my selection tool selected. If you'll turn on Auto Select, this will automatically click on whatever layer that you click your mouse on. So if I wanted to quickly select this building, I can click on it and notice that it jumped down to layer 6. Now I can move it. Or if I wanted to move my moon around, I can click on the moon now and move it around. If you don't have it selected, then no matter where you click, even if I clicked on another building, it's still only going to stay on that one layer that you have selected. So that's just kind of a quick, easy way of quickly selecting something. Let's move back down to our tree. For this project, I want you to make multiple copies of this tree, 4 or 5 of them just going along this bottom edge. Here's how you can make a copy of a layer. First of all, I've got layer 8 selected. I can click on this layer and drag it down to this icon, which will allow me to make a new layer. If I hover over it, you can see it says create a new layer. So if I click layer 8 and drag it down, when I let go, you see I've got layer 8 copy. It's made a copy of the tree on top of the other layer that's below it. Pretty neat. Here's an even better way of making a copy. Here's where the Option key comes in handy again. Hold down your Option key and look at my cursor. I've got a double arrow now. With the Option key held down, you can click and drag, and it'll very quickly make another copy of the layer that you had selected. And so that's what we're going to do. Click and drag, and just make multiple copies of this one until it fills up the entire length that you're working on. All good? I want to show you one more thing. Is this not information overload? Okay, it's only Wednesday. We're good. All right, the last thing we're going to do. If I was looking at this just as a graphic designer, one thing I like to have is all the elements on my page be able to pop out from one another. When I see this, it looks a little flat to me. Even though there's good contrast between all the elements, I still want them to have their own sense of depth to it. So we're going to do one thing to each of the layers that'll add a little bit more depth to what we're working on. I'll zoom back into one of the trees and show you what we're going to do. We're going to add a drop shadow behind this tree. I've got the layer selected. So to do this, we're going to have to open up what's called our Layer Effects palette. With the layers selected, look down at the very bottom left-hand side of the Layers palette for the little FX icon. If you click on it, you've got a series of options to choose from. The first one is the drop shadow. With this one selected, you've got a little layer style palette, and you can play around with some of the other ones. The main one we're going to deal with is just drop shadow. And these are all the options that allow you to manipulate. You can already see a little small drop shadow behind it. For instance, you can change up the distance that it goes, the opacity of it. You can even change the color if you wanted, how the size of it and the spread of it, so I can make it very, very big, very large. I've given you the exact information about what I want you to type in. So for instance, I want the distance to be 0 pixels. It's going to have a spread of 45%, and we're going to drop the size to 70. One thing I didn't notice that I didn't put on there is I want you to drop the opacity of this. This is kind of a dark drop shadow, so I'm going to bring the opacity down just a little bit. 40% is pretty good for that. Just having that little bit of a drop shadow, I could even change up the size, gives it that just much more punch for what we're working on. Let's see. If I zoom back out, now it's got a drop shadow around it. Let's add it to all of the other layers. Rather than having to go to each individual layer, choose drop shadow again, and then type in all the information, I'm going to show you how to do it very quickly. I'm going to hit cancel. You could do it that way. To make a copy of any layer effect that you have, I'll drag it so we can see it. Hold down your Option key. There's the Option key again. Click and drag. Whoops. Got ahead of myself. Click on the name of the effect and drag it down on top of another layer. Notice I got a little FX. When I let go, it made a copy of that effect, and now it's on that layer as well. So Option, click and drag. And we're going to do the same thing to each of the other layers, even on the buildings. Click and drag. And it's just a great, easy way of copying one layer and adding the effect to the other. Y'all think you can get it? When you're done with these, you can always save the Photoshop version, but what I want you to do is to go to Save As also, change your format to a JPEG, and you're going to upload the JPEG of the Selection City project to Moodle once you're finished. Okay? Turn your computers back over to you. If you don't finish this one today, that's totally okay. It's going to be due next class period.